Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Know-How Korner. This is where we are actually looking at academic research, and the cool thing is we are through this podcast bridging between academia and practice. What that means is we're meeting with professors like Katelynn here and researchers who are having some very interesting findings in the way we should be running our accounting practices or the way we should be doing accounting. And so, Katelynn, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Donnie. So I am newly Dr. Katelynn Hopson. I just finished my dissertation through the University of Missouri St. Louis this past spring, and I currently work at Arkansas Tech University as an accounting professor there. And yeah, I had no idea what I wanted to do whenever I started my dissertation and research. I knew, well, let me take it a step back further. I didn't even know I wanted to be an accountant until I took my first accounting class. And then I loved it. I love how everything balances. And, that sounds so nerdy, but I love how it's like a puzzle and it all fits together. And so then went and worked in public accounting as an auditor. And I also really enjoyed that, getting to look and at these different clients and see how they're similar but also different and how they interact with one another. I found it very interesting. But I knew I always wanted to come back and teach, so I started pursuing that. And when I went into my doctorate program, again, I thought maybe I would with audit or AI is the new happening thing. I thought maybe that, but then I started reading about the psychology aspects of everything in organizations and organizational behavior. Um, that's when I thought about the accountants themselves, so behavioral accounting, and that's what kind of got me on this path. And so I started looking into accountants' hopefulness and how that relates to retention, and hopefully I can look at it for recruitment too one day. So yeah.
Very cool, very cool. But you said hope. Now, hope, like we're talking like I hope that everything's gonna be okay, that kind of hope.
Yeah, yeah. Yes and no. So hope, like, everyone knows what hope is. You feel, I mean, hopefully everyone does, right? Has felt hope at some point in their life over, hoping to get a job promotion or win an award or, just like make it through the day without, getting upset, stuff like that. But there's actually, in like research, a couple of different types of hope. And so there's your trait hope, which is just how hopeful of a person you are. Like if you go into um, a meeting, like, are you more hopeful than your colleague? How the meeting's going to go. Where there's also state hope, and that's what I really looked into, and that's how hopeful someone is about a particular event or time period. So I looked at how hopeful accountants are in relation to busy season because it's a reoccurring event that happens from January to April every year. And so those are two types of hope. There's also persevering hope, which is your long-term hope if you have long-term goals. Oh, and that's kind of, let me take it back a step too. With hope, you have to have something, right? There's actually three components of hope: your goals. So you have to have something in mind that you're striving for. And then pathways, which is the ways to try to achieve those goals. So kind of think mapping out from point A to point B, how do I get to that goal? And then the third component is your agency. So your motivation to get you going, to keep staying on that path to reach your, final destination, your goal. So with that persevering hope is when you have long-term goals that it's going to take, more than just a couple months. It could take years. So this is if within like public accounting, sometimes it takes years for a promotion. So that could be persevering hope. And then the last type of hope is just children's trait hope, and the other ones were adult hopes.
Well, cool. That's actually really interesting. And if I remember reading correctly, you said that state hope is like a resource. It's like something that we can is like accumulate or have quantify.
Yes, exactly. So with your state hope, it can be gained and lost over time. So it depends on, your past experiences and, also your knowledge, whether how hopeful you are, like right at the start. So let's say, you're new to the job, your hopefulness, depending on what you know, could be very high, or it could be low, depending on if you have bad connotations before going in, which hopefully don't. But that could be your standard of like where you're starting from, and then depending on how the process goes, you can gain and lose hope over time. So, if you're trying to, make it to a certain promotion and you're just starting out and work is going well, it's not as crazy as it seemed and you're getting in the hang of things, then chances are your hopefulness is going to keep increasing, right? And be higher standard you started with or the baseline. Where if things aren't going so well, you could decrease your hopefulness, which, that's been shown. People who have lower levels of hope are more likely to want to leave, quit their jobs or feel burnout and stuff like that, where people with higher levels of hope are more likely to want to stay and to, less likely to feel burned out and have some of those negative feelings.
I can definitely see why you're putting this around busy season
Right.
then, because then it's like, yeah, I feel I can see where people over busy season probably for the most part start to get reduce that because they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much more work we got to do. I'm stressed, or I can't get these things. But is that something that we can really affect then?
Yeah, so that's what I'm hoping to look more into. So my current, like my dissertation, I just looked at turnover intentions. I didn't get to look at burnout because there was too much. They wanted me to condense it, but I'm hoping to do that later on. But they're in other professions. So there's been a lot of research on like the medical field, and there hasn't been a lot on like accountants and other types of businesses. But in some of those stressful professions, within the medical field, they have shown that, people who do have higher levels during stressful times are less likely to have burnout and more likely to stay within their organization. So I do think it could really relate to this and we could see results. Um, so mine specifically, I just looked at hope, or public accountants' hopefulness and their turnover intention. So how likely they were to leave the organization and how they appraised stress during busy season. So because that's been shown of how they perceive stress could impact, depending on their level of hope, them wanting to stay in the profession, well, in the organization or not. And stress could be perceived as either kind of more of like positive as a challenge or a motivator to keep you going, or a hindrance where it debilitates you and you kind of just want out of there. It's more negative.
That's interesting. So challenge and hindrance. Uh,
Yes.
is that is that like at the two ends of a spectrum in terms of how stressed I am, or tell me more about what does that mean?
Yeah, so it is like two ends of a spectrum. They're basically kind of like opposites one another, but it's more of how they perceive stress. So, well, it started off like they would try to put different things within workplaces and call it either a hindrance or a challenge. So, like workload would actually be a challenge, and where like organization red tape, like trying to ask for permission and get through stuff would be a hindrance. But then like they started getting mixed results and it wasn't consistent. And so they realized it's the perceptions people have of these types of stressors that actually determine whether they're a challenge or a hindrance. So it's how the person perceives it, because everyone, I mean, I could perceive workload as, oh, I love it, it keeps me going, or someone else might be like, this is too much. This makes me want to get out of here, you know?
So is that kind of same as glass half full, glass half empty?
Basically, yeah, yeah. So and that's all about like perception, right? So yeah, just how like basically an hourglass full of stress.
Okay, okay. And so you tied that to turnover intentions. Tell us more about that.
Yes. And so, turnover intentions is just how likely someone is to want to quit their job. And so in my dissertation, I will say I was like, it was just a sample. So this is not saying all public accountants. I wish, right? They were actually really hopeful on average. They had high levels of hope on average going into busy season and low levels of wanting to quit their job, which I mean, that might change by the end of busy season. You never know. Um, you know, the likelihood of wanting to quit one's job, it can be measured at or surveyed at any point in time, and depending on what's going on and also how apprehensive they are, especially around busy season, could impact how likely they are to want to leave, even if it's not like that very second. Some of the questions asked within the next year or within the next few months, which it would include after busy season, because that is when a lot of people leave public accounting firms. So with that, with the likelihood to want to leave, that's the retention aspect of it all, of determining whether they want to stay or go, basically.
So that's okay. So that makes sense, and I can see where we would apply that to, or firms may want to apply that to
Yeah.
try and retain their people. So from a practical standpoint, what should firms be doing? Because you said that it's the person's perception,
Mhm.
and in my head, I'm kind of going, well, I don't know if I can affect that person because that's kind of their personality. It's going to be tied back to their personality. So what can I as a firm do? Is there something before busy season or during busy season? Like what do I need to do to actually help? What can I do to affect this or prevent the turnover as affect me?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, every firm is going to want, I mean, definitely now and over the past decades, retention has been a thing, right, in recruitment, for public accounting firms. So I think anything that we can see that can be related to retention, should be at least tried, right? And so what firms can do, um, with hope, there's a couple different things. So there's been recommended like a hope culture, which is an organization level of hope. So this hasn't been, at least to the best of my knowledge, hasn't been done within public accounting, but it has been done with like rehab facilities that, not just, the people who are in the facility themselves, but also the workers there, the employees. It can be very stressful, and they can also experience burnout. And so what they did was they created this whole culture within the organization of basically at the organization level, we create these goals, but then we have our clients and our employees create these goals, and we work together to try to develop pathways, so the ways to achieve them, and keep each other motivated. And so they would do like weekly check-ins and stuff like that to ensure that each person had their own goals set and they're still working on them. And then also how that tied to the overall facility. And so I think, with public accounting firms, I think that's like an adaptation of this could really be useful, of, because firms all have their own goals, right? I mean, it's not just, it might not be just, your revenue, how much they're trying to get for that or profit, but it could also be like if they're trying to grow or trying to obtain, so many clients or connections with clients, stuff like that, that I think, you know, if you let your employees know, not just the partners and the higher ups, but even let, staff or, senior associates know that, um, they can tie them into it as well. I think that could be really beneficial because then they'll feel like they're contributing to the overall firm's goals. But then also, if they're more open about letting their employees create their own goals and speaking with their clients about their own goals, and they could tie that all in together. This will kind of get to like Amy Cooper's job embeddedness, right? Where people feel more embedded within their firm. I think could really help keep them wanting to be there because they'll also feel more valued too, right? But what research has shown is a lot of people have sometimes trouble with developing pathways for their goals. And so because of that, like not knowing how to achieve their goal, I think whenever employees are feel like have a more open communication of saying what they want, um, then other people can help them figure out how to get what they want, right? And something, this is not the whole culture, but just one of these training initiatives with Hope that they mentioned was goals in and out of the workplace, right? Because we're people and we don't just work, right? Like we do other things, we have hobbies and, people care about, charities and events and stuff like that, their families, their friends. So really they could also develop these goals outside of the workplace, but then, if the firm is, open to helping them try to achieve those goals as well, it'll make them feel valued as a person and not just an employee. And I think that goes really far, definitely in today's workplaces, that it can really help keep employees there rather than them just going on to another firm or going private or wherever.
That makes a lot of sense to me because that's one of the things I think really differentiates the accounting industry as a whole,
Yeah.
the firms, is the amount of volunteerism and
Mhm.
things, and a lot of, to me, it goes beyond just your typical I'm networking
Yeah.
and things, right? It's actually helping and serving the community. So a lot of the other things you said too, I think points towards this trend that we've been seeing, especially with post-pandemic or during and
Yeah.
post-pandemic on these like one-on-ones.
Mhm.
Like you mentioned, the need so that for example, even myself as a supervisor, what I'm trying to do is help my staff feel like I actually care about them as a person. I want to know
Yes.
more than just the work side. Is something else going on? Do you have some kind of goal outside that you're trying to hit? Trying to think of an example. One of the women that we work with, she does a lot of volunteering, and so a lot of, with the court, she does it with the courts. So sometimes last minute she has to go help with something. She does like work with victims. And so we were trying to be very accommodating in terms of like flex time and scheduling. It's like, yeah, take care of that. We'll work around some of that as long as you block out the time on your calendar. We know that you might be going and doing some of that. And so we were able to help her, support her in actually
Yeah.
achieving those things outside of the work context.
Yeah, and that is exactly it. Like that is such a great example because like having someone to be able to talk to, and also this was another thing, like it doesn't always have to be the same person, right? You don't have to always have the same mentor, like maybe you started out with at the firm. Like you could have someone else, like even in a different office or in a different, like if you're in audit and they're in tax or consulting, like you can switch. It doesn't always have to be always in your area. Um, but having someone that you can talk to one on one and to help also motivate you, that agency component of hope to get you to those goals and just, being supportive of if they do have to leave for some reason to be at these events or whatever the circumstances are. I think, again, I think it goes a long way and it helps retain people. I really do think that.
So the kind of reading between the lines in some of what you said, it sounds like what firms really need to do is be proactive in creating this positivity. In my head, I'm also thinking, but it also needs to not be fake positivity because everyone kind of sees
Yes.
through that, right? So it's like, are we being kind of realistic?
Mhm.
But let's keep that positive tone, having outlets, kind of group support, which I think a lot of times in busy season we forget about because everyone gets busy, we all kind of do our own things, but that's maybe where even these check-ins are still needed. Are you doing okay? Is there anything else going on? We've had people had deaths in the family or some type of
Yes.
family emergency. Understanding that and making it open where they're willing to share this. Hey, I'm going through this thing. I'm having an issue, and I need some support, even if it's just grace for a week. Let me not do my busy season level, um, type of a thing. Hmm. Okay, I can
Yeah.
so I can see. And anything else you would recommend that they're kind of do?
No, I completely agree with that. And I think the check-ins, because that's what like that facility had done with the whole culture, like it doesn't always, because I mean I worked in public accounting and I did have like a buddy that, but it would only be like a yearly or like twice a year evaluation where we talk about goals, where I think it needs to be like, I do think that's important because you need to be evaluated, all of that, but at the same time there does need to be a little bit more like casual conversation about it where you can feel okay to talk about if something's going on with your family, or like if you do need more time off. So sometimes a more casual relationship, which isn't too casual, right, but like a casual relationship can help, make it easier to talk to them, and not, and they can really feel supported and not the fake positivity, because otherwise if they even suspect that, they're going to be like, well, I don't want any part of this, right? Like, and I want to feel actually supported, or they won't actually want to talk to them anymore about it if they feel that way. So I think definitely, having people in, sometimes people don't drive well with one another, and that's okay too. Like if the person you're like mentor is supposed to be at first, and it doesn't pan out well, I think, try to find someone you have talked to, like in meetings, or, in the break room, and then maybe just you have that person be the one that you try to work with on setting your goals, and, um, talking to about support and everything. It doesn't always have to be a designated person.
Yeah, interesting, interesting. So I think you're bringing in the concept there. I've heard of a lot of firms having like a mentor or a
Yeah.
coach, but also it's the informal side of what you're saying. Like you
Yes.
said, a buddy. We try to do that with our new hires, pair them with a buddy. Maybe it needs to
Yeah.
not just be the new hires that get paired with that. The other thing that's coming to mind is employee resource groups. Is
Yeah.
is that in your research anywhere?
Yeah, I didn't find anything about like resource groups like within Hope, but I've seen that with like other organizations and stuff. And I do think that could be very useful. Of like, once people who have similar interests, and they could develop a group, and maybe kind of going back to the volunteering thing, if like people who have similar interests there, they could group up and then be like, okay, I want to contribute so much towards the Humane Society within this next year or 5 years, and then if they all also care about that, they can work on those goals together. And I think, again, I think that like once you make those kind of relationships, and it's going to increase their hopefulness, even though it's for something outside of work. It's going to make them want to stay at that firm, and then they can help each other with their goals at work as well too, right? Because then they can rely upon one another. And so I think it just really can bring a good foundation as long as people work towards it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, and you already gave the touch point over to Amy Cooper's research. For
Yeah.
those of you listening, if you haven't already heard that one, I already interviewed Amy, so that podcast is sitting out there for you all. Amy looked at employee embeddedness, also looking at turnover intention, correlating that with turnover intention. So take a little bit of Amy's work, take some of Katelyn's work. We've got some other ones coming up as well that are all. I know we've got Brian with burnout that's going to be coming out. So we've got a bunch of researchers that are all kind of we're pulling together because they all looked at different areas. So it'd be interesting to see this. Now, Caitlin, when I listen to all of this, it also really makes me think of the bigger picture of what we do as accountants. Because I've always said, or maybe not always, I've definitely more recently, and the pandemic was what really hit this off, but I was saying it before then, that as accountants, we deliver three things to our clients. One is peace of mind, because then it's like, don't worry about that audit letter you got from the IRS. Don't worry about, whatever it is, cybersecurity. We've got you covered. We're going to help you get through this. The second is vision and clarity, which you did reference, because I think that's helping them see the pathway. And that's a lot of what you said, like,
Yes.
what's your vision? Whether
Mhm.
it's vision for the future, usually is what we're looking at, and then clarity around how you're going to achieve that.
Mhm.
So it could be as simple as I'm going to own a house, I'm going to put my kids through college, I'm going to retire comfortably. In the work that we do, it's tell us where you want your organization to be 3 to 5 years from now. We will figure out the transformation roadmap to get you there. And I've often said that both of these lead to hope. And that's where it was like, well, but hope's really fuzzy and it's really just that feeling. But I love that your research kind of reaffirmed and it's making me think we need to figure out a way to quantify the hope that accountants actually provide to clients because I feel like that's the endpoint. Yeah, like you said, if you see a lot of hindrances, and I just had this last week with a client where I could tell she's the COO of a nonprofit that was heavily impacted by some of the um, federal administration's cuts. So they lost a lot of grants. They've had to downsize by almost half. So she's feeling really down. They're having some challenges with their financial reporting right now. And I talked her through it, and she's like, "So how long is this going to take? Like a year?" And I was like, "No, this is probably like a 6 month project." And she goes, "Well, our organization takes a long time." And I was like, "No, I already factored that in. If you weren't having these other challenges, I would have said it's 3 to 4 now. So I'm telling you it's 6, and that's doable." And you could just see her kind of light up. Basically, I gave her hope because even the next day she sent me an email that was like, "Thank you so much for the talk. I really needed that," right? And you actually gave me another implication, which is she's probably taking that into everything else that she's doing, rather than feeling like, "Oh my gosh, we're under all this stress, or we're under this pressure, or we might have to." I don't think she wasn't quite at that point yet, but we might have to shut down. But it's like we're having all these challenges. I might lose my job because I'm the one that's supposed to be holding this together, and then to give her the hope of we got the path for you, the pathway for you, so we can kind of shore her up. And I'd be curious if we can study that for other things that accountants do.
Yeah, no, I think that is such a great point because I think, like I'm looking at the accountants themselves, but you can influence other people's hope. Like that's what it's been shown in these other professions, right? And that's what I'm talking about with hopefully, these firms will help their employees do, but the accountants themselves can help their clients, right? And I mean, that's what our job is. We're a service provider of providing, either if doing their taxes or tax advice, their audit for them, or consulting. And but the thing is sometimes we do get these clients who come in with either negative perceptions or are just really worried, because maybe they did get like a letter in the mail or, all the laws change all the time. The tax laws change all the time. And so like when those things happen, it can really stress people out. And, they might not have that background that accountants do. And so we can help them, bring in and gain their hope so they don't have to feel all this worry and the stress that like those hindrances that debilitate them. And so then they're more likely to also like an outcome of this could be they could be become a loyal repeat client, right, where they won't come to us to ask us for our advice and for our services and different, it could be consulting or audits or tax, whatever it might be. But I think like helping, clients, like that's again what we're supposed to be doing anyway. So, relieving of them of that tension, I think can be so beneficial. So, accountants not just be the ones to hopefully gain their own hope, but can help, pass that forward, and help their clients with that too, I think could be so beneficial. And, again, it could help the whole profession have, good, you know, like good perceptions of the profession as well, which is just amazing.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel like students don't really understand what we
Yeah,
really do, and we have to change that message to them.
mhm.
Bringers of hope, new role for
Exactly.
accountants. Well, you've definitely given me some hope on a lot of this stuff. So if other people wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my work email is khopson, Hopson, 2 at atu.edu. And I check it, I don't check it as often in the summer, but, all the rest of the year, I'm checking it like so many times a day. So yeah, that's the best way to reach me.
Wonderful. And we are looking forward to working with you and Amy and the others that have done this really great hybrid research between psychology, or I would even go with positive psychology and accounting to really take all of this stuff into well, I was going to say into the future, but it's really the near future because
Yes.
we can already start to apply a lot of this stuff in practice.
Hmm. I 100% agree. And I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Well, again, all of you out there, I hope you gained some things here. If you are looking for more advice, feel free to reach out to Katelynn or reach out to us here at the center, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. See you then. The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a framework for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply the innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out how the center resources can help you and your team members at www.improvetheworld.net. Thanks again, and I hope you join us for another Know-How Korner.